The story begins during World War II. A Japanese businessman named Saito was being sent back to Japan along with some other prisoners, where they would have to work in slavery. Saito was kept alone, far away from the others. Soon, two guards took him to the ship's commander. The commander looked at him with hateful eyes and said that betraying your own country is unforgivable, but the death penalty would be very easy for you. It is not enough for the crime you have committed. At that moment, some other soldiers brought another prisoner named Bronson. Bronson was from Britain. He harbored deep hatred toward the Japanese people. The commander then devised his plan. For as long as both of them had life left, they would remain chained to each other. The soldiers stepped forward and shackled their legs together. Bronson said, "Just kill me, don't chain me with the Japanese," but no one listened to him. It seemed as if this was their fate. At that moment, enemies attacked the ship from above, and all the imprisoned soldiers began a revolt. Bronson and Saito took advantage of the chaos to escape and fought alongside the soldiers. A submarine approached the ship and fired a missile at it. In the cabin, only the officer and the two prisoners remained. The commanding officer drew his gun to kill them, but Bronson quickly grabbed Saito, and both jumped into the sea just before the entire ship exploded. After a few hours, Bronson, swimming, brought Saito to a deserted island. Once on land, Saito collapsed in unconsciousness. The next day, Saito woke up thinking it had all been a terrible dream. But when he saw the chain on his leg, he faced the reality. He tried to wake Bronson, but he remained unconscious. Nearby, the body of a soldier had washed up on the shore, and Saito took his gun. He contemplated killing Bronson to gain freedom. But suddenly, Bronson woke up and attacked him. A fierce fight broke out between them. As they fought along the edge of the sea, a terrifying scream echoed from the water. Bronson tried to push Saito into the sea, but blood started flowing from Saito's wounded leg. The smell drew an unknown creature toward them. The creature suddenly grabbed Bronson and attacked with lightning-fast claws. Saito immediately raised his gun and aimed at Bronson first, but instead of killing him, he shot the creature. It retreated and disappeared into the water. Bronson was now injured. Both realized that on this island, something far more dangerous than their enmity existed. They made a truce to survive. Moving a little away from the shore, Bronson asked, "What was that creature?"
They both spoke different languages, so Saito just pretended to understand, but his face clearly showed that he knew what he had just witnessed. Saito remained silent for a while, thinking about how to survive. In the end, in despair, he realized that dying here seemed inevitable. But Bronson immediately stopped him and said, "Are you crazy?" Then he took out the last bullet from his gun, handed it to Saito, and said that they would have to fight together against the creature that was chasing them. They found some supplies that had washed up on the shore. Bronson found a pack of cigarettes and offered it to Saito, but Saito refused. Sadness welled up in his eyes. While Bronson searched for useful items, he came across the body of a young soldier who had been his companion. He cried and said he was just a young boy. His whole life was ahead of him. He would have survived if these damned Japanese hadn't started this war. Even if Saito didn't fully understand his words, he felt his pain completely. He gave Bronson water, and after drinking, they started gathering more supplies together for the night. As darkness fell, they set up a makeshift camp to get by. Bronson tried to wear his shoe, but the chains made it painful and he couldn't put it on. Then Saito realized he had picked up the big shoes of a dead soldier and gave one shoe to Bronson, but Bronson refused to wear it because he didn't want to touch anything Japanese. Saito caught some crabs and offered them to his new companion. Bronson, who had been starving for days, hesitated at first, but then took the food, though a crab slipped from his hands into the dirt. Seeing this, Saito gave him another crab. Bronson refused initially, but Saito insisted, and Bronson finally accepted it. He was extremely hungry, and after tasting the crab, he enjoyed it. Gradually, they started opening up to each other. Bronson shared more about himself, and Saito began to understand a little. He even learned to say Bronson's name. Then Saito introduced himself. "My name is Saito." Bronson asked, "What about these chains?" But Saito remained silent. Later, Bronson fashioned a tool to try and cut the chain, but it failed. Then Saito pointed with his foot toward a weak spot in the chain and said something in Japanese. Bronson didn't understand the words but got the hint from the gesture. He wondered if he should try. Encouraged by Saito, he struck twice and the chain loosened. Now it was Bronson's turn. Saito asked for the weapon, which made him a little nervous, but he trusted him. As Saito struck the chain near Bronson's leg,
Then Bronson said, "Brother, I can't watch. I'm closing my eyes." Hearing this, Saito laughed. With a single strike, he freed Bronson. Bronson jumped for joy that his leg was safe, and both of them celebrated happily. But their voices caught the attention of something hidden in the darkness. Saito sensed that something was approaching and both became alert. However, the creature soon disappeared. They picked up their weapons and went out searching for clues. Saito noticed some tracks in the sand and began a small investigation. Suddenly, a sound drew his attention. When they turned around, they saw two Japanese soldiers accompanied by a prisoner. Bronson feared that Saito might abandon him. But Saito, to show that he could be trusted, handed Bronson his weapon and said, "Quick, hide!" Saito stayed behind and noticed the food boiling. One of the soldiers smelled something and went to investigate, thinking someone might be sleeping in the camp. Saito came forward and said, "Don't shoot," while Bronson watched everything from a distance. The Japanese soldiers didn't know that Saito had already been declared a traitor, which made them trust him. But Bronson didn't realize that the real danger was right behind him. In the camp, Saito asked his old companions if anyone had survived. They replied that only they had survived because they were wearing life jackets. The rest had drowned. It took Bronson a while to realize that the sea creature was still behind him. Terrified, he didn't know what to do and finally closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the terrifying creature had disappeared. Now the Japanese soldiers began interrogating Saito, asking if anyone else was there. Saito said he was alone, but the soldiers became suspicious because they found some clues indicating Bronson's presence. One soldier picked up his sword and said that a rumor had spread before the ship sank that a traitor and an enemy had been chained together. When they removed the cloth from Saito's leg, they realized he was the traitor. Another soldier asked where the fugitive was. Saito said he was dead and pointed to a grave where they had buried Bronson's friend. One Japanese soldier accused Saito of being not only a traitor, but also a liar, threatening to cut his throat if he didn't tell the truth. At that moment, a terrifying roar echoed across the island, and everyone froze. The other prisoner, terrified, shouted that whatever this creature was, it was not human. He fell to his knees and began praying for protection. The
soldier told the young recruit to go check where the sound was coming from. He approached Bronson. Bronson stepped on a dry tree branch and the sound was triggered. The soldier started moving toward him, but at that moment, the growl of the creature made him run in the opposite direction. He reached the cave gate through a path in the forest and went inside, unaware that the creature was hiding among the stones at the entrance. Meanwhile, Bronson tried to save his friend. Inside the cave, the creature emerged from behind the soldier. The soldier turned and swung his sword, but the creature instantly broke his arm. His scream echoed across the island. Another soldier thought it had happened because of Saito, so he went to attack him. But Bronson struck first and killed that soldier. As Bronson was about to fire his gun at him, the creature grabbed the soldier's head, smashed it, and let out a terrifying roar. Bronson and Saito ran to hide. The creature reached the injured soldier and finished him off. Another prisoner also tried to escape, but the creature pounced on him and killed him as well. Bronson and Saito watched everything from a distance. They decided they had to get out, but the creature saw them and began chasing. Both ran toward the forest, with Saito clearing the path with a machete. Bronson said he had a plan and that they should stop, but Saito didn't understand his language and kept moving ahead. Bronson stumbled and fell behind, and the creature immediately reached him. Panicked, Bronson fired his gun, but the shot missed. His last bullet was wasted. The creature grabbed Bronson by the throat and raised its claw to kill him, but Saito suddenly returned and attacked the creature, freeing Bronson. They took advantage of the moment to escape, but they slipped on a slope and fell, both sustaining serious injuries. The next day, both were badly hurt. When Saito opened his eyes, he felt something sharp lodged in his chest. With great pain, he managed to remove it. Meanwhile, Bronson was lying on a rotting piece of wood hanging by the waterfall. When he tried to move, the wood swung, and despite trying to balance himself, he slipped, hit a rock, and fell into the water. Underwater, memories of the first attack overwhelmed him.
He reached a large waterfall that was blocking the path ahead. Still, he somehow decided to press on. Evening was falling, and the two were still separated. Saito was trying to get out from the riverbank, but despite countless attempts, he could not find Bronson. Meanwhile, Bronson reached the waterfall and thought he would rest a little. But he began to hear some sounds nearby. Saito was still wandering through the forest. Hearing those sounds made him alert. Bronson finally came out from the deeper part and sat on the shore, but he immediately felt someone's presence beside him. When he turned to look, there was a large crocodile. Finding no bait, it lay still without moving. The crocodile only watched and then returned to the water. Bronson was still frightened. He rose quietly and started walking. He was about to climb above the waterfall when he slipped, and at that moment, he saw the creature that was now applying something to the wound Saito had received. Bronson realized this was no mindless animal. It could think, it could heal its wounds, and now it was trying to find a way to tell Saito about this. But accidentally he made a sound, and then somehow, trying to hide, he began to slip away. He kept watching as the creature moved toward the riverbank. Suddenly, that same crocodile attacked the creature and dragged it away. The water quickly turned red, and for a while the crocodile thrashed as it tried to breathe. Then the creature surfaced and tore the crocodile in two. Seeing this, Bronson became even more terrified. The creature let out another piercing scream that reached Saito on the other side. Bronson ran immediately. Saito was still searching for him in the forest. A little later, Saito suddenly saw something strange. He went closer and found a corpse tied to a tree. Terrified, he stumbled and fell into a pit. Inside the pit, Saito found the head of another of those creatures. He stared at the sight for a while and then realized it was dead. With a new hope, he decided to leave and began searching the corpse for anything useful. He found a gun in the corpse's hand and, seeing spent shells on the ground, guessed that this man must have killed the creature. Saito picked up the gun. Now, with a katana and a pistol, he thought, I will hunt that creature too. On the way, he found wreckage of a broken plane and waded through the water to reach it. When he entered the half-sunken plane, he saw a few things. At the same time, Bronson had found another piece of the plane and reached the same wreck. Before going inside, he fashioned a makeshift weapon from some scrap metal. Then he entered the plane and found a flare gun, a lighter. They found cigarettes and a few other items inside the plane, but one object caught Bronson's eye. While trying to grab it, he slipped and saw something stuck in the wing of the plane. On closer inspection, he realized it was a bomb. Seeing the bomb gave him an idea. Bronson rested for a short while and lit a cigarette. As he smoked, he heard footsteps. When he turned, Saito was standing there. Bronson asked why he was trembling and offered him the cigarette. Saito refused and said he needed to show him something important. Bronson didn't understand, so Saito used his lighter to guide him. Together they went to a cave. Once inside, Saito pointed to something strange. They saw a female creature brooding over another egg. Bronson cautiously approached, but Saito warned him. This was a female. Stay away. She becomes extremely dangerous when protecting her home and offspring. Bronson insisted that he wouldn't leave without confronting it. Saito tried to explain that if they killed the female, the other creatures would become far more dangerous and would surely hunt them down. But Bronson said, either they survive or we do. He had an idea and asked Saito to follow him. Bronson then showed Saito the bomb he had found in the plane and asked for help carrying it to the creature's nest. Together they struggled to get the bomb there. When they arrived, they noticed the trigger was bent. Bronson tried to fix it, but Saito insisted, we need to get out of here as fast as possible. It could explode at any moment. Meanwhile, the female was returning to her cave. Bronson mentioned that there was an emergency hammer in the plane that might help, but someone would need to stay behind to activate the bomb. Saito said solemnly that it was because of him they were in this situation and volunteered to stay. Just then, the female let out a terrifying roar. Both decided to move outside. Bronson lit a flare so they could see in the darkness. While Saito kept watch, Bronson struggled to pull out the hammer, which was stuck and required great effort. Suddenly, the monster appeared in front of Saito. He immediately prepared to fight. A fierce battle ensued. The creature fought intelligently and cautiously. Finally, Bronson managed to free the hammer from the plane. Saito held his ground, pushing the monster toward the plane while Bronson struck it multiple times with the hammer. Together, they engaged in the fight and even managed to corner it for a short while. But when they looked up at the sky, they saw the fire slowly dying out. Then, when they looked ahead, the tongue was gone. They quickly returned to the cave to finish the job. Saito once again kept watch while Bronson tried to fix the bomb's latch. Just as Bronson repaired the latch, the creature attacked from behind. Saito immediately plunged his knife into its chest. As the creature prepared to tear off his head, it slammed him against the wall and then turned back to attack Bronson, injuring him severely. Saito somehow mustered the strength to get up and grab his weapon. And with one swift move, he shot the creature in the eye, forcing it to release Bronson. Saito fired again, but missed, so he changed his aim and shot the creature's egg. The egg exploded, and one of the female's offspring fell to the ground, which enraged the mother. Saito ran to help his friend, but Bronson was badly wounded. Bronson gave Saito all his belongings and told him to run away quickly. While the female was picking up her child, Saito was in pain, but, forced by circumstance, he left his friend and fled the cave. The female then approached Bronson. Bronson immediately activated the bomb. He started the countdown, but when he reached 3, the bomb did not explode. Then he remembered what his friend Saito had told him. He activated the bomb the way Saito had shown, and a huge blast occurred, which Saito saw from a distance. Saito was devastated at losing his friend. Then he heard that dreadful scream again and realized the creature was still alive. He began running through the underbrush, with the female chasing him along the forest path. Saito reached the shoreline and collapsed to his knees in despair. But remembering his friend's sacrifice filled him with rage, and he decided to fight. When the female reached the shore and saw someone kneeling before her, she lunged at him, but it was a trap. Saito rose from the sand and stood before the creature. He struck it, but was wounded himself. He refused to give up and stood again to face the beast. He taunted the female. "You killed your child, didn't you? Come!" As she struck at Saito, he slashed open her belly, and the female fell to the ground. He went to the weakened creature, leaned over it, and drew his sword. But instead of killing it, he drove the sword into the ground beside it and, stepping back a few paces, picked up a flare gun. Then some more noises came from the forest, and he started moving toward the shoreline. There, he tried to light a fire, but the flare was broken. His last hope was gone. Exhausted and defeated, Saito collapsed on the sand and lost consciousness. Hours later, Saito opened his eyes on an American ship, where an officer was interrogating him. A Japanese translator was also present. The officer asked if Bronson had helped him, but Saito remained silent. The officer then told the translator to ask what he had done and what his crime was. Saito replied that he had killed his own commander because he was needlessly leading all his comrades to their deaths. The officer asked again about Bronson, and Saito recalled the moments they had shared. By the end, they had become true friends. The officer then asked if anyone else had survived on the island. Saito said no one had. Looking out the ship's window as it moved away from the shore, he realized that many other creatures were still alive, and this island would remain their domain. If you like the video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.